But this is an example how to use APIs from JDabbit. For this, I've set up an external employee system with an API, a demo, that we are going to use to get data from and send data from JDabbit. We're going to set up connections, connectors, and read and write to JDE. So let's get started. So first we're going to look at Swagger. Our API has a Swagger frontend that documents the API, and you can even test the API. A lot of modern new APIs have a Swagger frontend that documents the API. Otherwise you need to have specific API documentation. But Swagger is nice because it shows what the API can do and how it works. So the initial thing we're going to set up is a connector, like the URL that was on Swagger, and we're going to set up a connector to the base URL of the API. A connector you have to set up by role or by user, and I'm going to do it for Star Public on JPY920. And I'm going to put in the endpoint for my API, summerschoolpy.steltic.com, and as you see, I pasted it from Swagger already for the employee interface. So this is the connection to my external employee system, which has that URL. After setting up the connection, I can set up a connector for putting the data into my external employee system. So I'm going to call it connector update external employee system. Yeah, let's call it system. And it's a REST, and I'm going to reuse the connection I just created. And as you see already, the URL pops in, and I'm going to do a put, because I'm going to put it in the external employee system. And the external system already documents that in the URL you need to put in the employee ID. So this is the first variable I'm defining, employee ID. And next to the employee ID, it requires a message with all the parameters. And Swagger UI already documents what the message should look like, and that's easy. It even allows you to test your external API within the documentation. So I'm going to create a simple example message and try it out to see if this would actually work. And as you see, yes, it took it. I mean, I got a message 200. So let's copy and paste my example message into my connection. It's important to also put in the header of the message that we're sending JSON. Now just paste the message in and change all the values to parameters with a dollar and curly braces around it. I think that's what you call it, curly braces. So send the employee ID, which is going to be my address book number, first name, last name, email, and phone number. Well, the best way, of course, after saving it is to test. So let's hit the test button, put in some values and see if it actually works. So we're going to employee ID 6001, and as you see, I named it employee ID 1 and employee ID. I found that in connections you can only use a variable once. So I'm putting it in twice. It's probably something that Oracle will update later. Alright, success. So I've just sent this message to my external employee system. The connection works. So now create the orchestration to get the data from JDEdits and send it to my connector. So what I'm going to do is create an orchestration. Called update external employee system. Save it and first specify the only parameter that we need for this orchestration, and that's of course the address book number, which is an integer, a number. So now I'm going to create 3 data requests to get the phone number, the email address, first and last name. So first create the first data request to get the phone number. Data request to get the phone number. And I'm going to get it from the V0115A. I happen to know that because I started the application and clicked on the data browser, and then it shows what the view is behind the program. So I need 2 parameters. My line ID is always 0, so I'm just going to specify that. And of course I need the address number to get the phone number for. And of course as output we need the phone number. Alright, save it and map the input parameter the address number to get the phone number. Alright, a second data request is to get the email address. So let's create a data request, get email address. And we're going to get it from the V01151, which is the view over the who is who, where the email addresses are. So address number, line ID, again, line ID 0. Let's beautify the address number again. Line ID 0. And in this case, we need to have back our email address. Electronic address, same thing. So save it, close it, and map the input fields. Last but not least, we're going to get the first and last name. Thanks Oracle again for making this very smooth. The current Orchestration Studio is incredibly stable. So yeah, again, put in the address number. Line ID 0. And get the first and last name. Not the alpha name. Let's beautify the address number, line ID 0. And let's call it first name, because that's what our employee database is looking for, first name and last name. Save it, close it, and map the address book number again. Now let's call our connector to put all that data in our external employee system. So map the fields, the employee ID, first name, last name, which is of course all the return values from our data request. Alright, then last map the email address and the phone number. Alright, then we can test and send the employee data to our external employee system. Let's check the address book. See what we're going to send. Oh yeah, we just sent some. There's not really nice names in there. But that doesn't matter. We're gonna have ugly data in our employee system then. Yes, the email address is there. So let's send it. That's the result of the data request, and the response was an empty response with no problems. So our external employee database should be updated now. So let's see if it's actually there. This is getting all the employees. That's definitely not what we want at this point in time. We want a single employee. This is the get with the parameter ID behind it. So let's put in 6001, scroll down, and this is exactly what was in JDAVIDs. Right, so we updated our external employee system from JDAVIDs data. This could be a typical interface thing. Now let's do it the other way around. Close out of this. Go to the home screen. I like creating a recording to do a screen recording, a process recorder for updating JDAVIDs. So I'm going to create a form service request and for updating my Alan Ray. So let's go to who is who and fill in the fields that we would like to update, which is the first name, surname, and put in some data, the last name with the surname, override it. Update the phone number, 1234, and the email address. So this is all we need to update JDAVIDs. Okay, click OK, save the updates in JDE. Alright, so let's create the service request from this. FR update JDE and save it. So now we have a simple process to update JDAVIDs. The next thing is look at Swagger again, to the API documentation, and now we are going to get the data from the employee database and put it inside JDAVIDs, which is now fairly simple. We just create another connector. which is getting the data from the external employee database using the same connector that we previously used. So the path is already in there. This requires the employee ID in the path, and this is a get, and we previously did a put. It's just a different method. And of course the content type is again JSON, and here we can already map the output fields and turn them into variables, which will be the variables for the basically for the service request that we are going to put in. So the employee ID, first name, the first name from the message from the that we are receiving is going to have the same variable name in JDAppets. So phone is going to be phone, and email is going to be email. So let's save it and quickly test it for our Alan Ray 6001. Yes, and I nicely got what I recently sent to my employee database. Now the only thing left is create an orchestration and to run the connector to get the data, and to run the form request to post it to update JDAppets from that data. So we're going to create an orchestration, update JDE from employee system, and this is the connector we just created, and we're going to pick our form request that we just recorded. The only input parameter again is the address book, which is a number, which is the input for the connector. Ooh, that's interesting. There must be something. Yeah, it shows up. All right, the input. So the input is the address number, and here in our form request we're updating JDAppets, and we can just populate the fields that we just received from our employee system. So the first name, the last name, the phone number, and the email address. And that's it. This is how we update JDAppets from our external employee system. So let's run it. Address book number 6001. And as you see on the top we get the data, and underneath the form request runs to update JDAppets. Let's check in JDAppets to see if we actually see all the data. Let's first go to who is who, and this is what we received. So the first name, last name, the phone number was updated. So this is basically, in a nutshell, how you create an interface to an external system. In this case, I put in an employee system to update external systems from JDAppets, or update JDAppets from an external system. And of course, yeah, I've actually implemented this in larger and all kinds of different systems, but this is basically how you do it. If you can do this, you can basically update any system or talk to any external system. So here by the example how to use APIs and drive external systems from orchestrations.